Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the stream, and thank you for joining us again today. This is going to be part 2 of the developer retrospective on the Room 4 Old Sins that we released last month on Steam. If you haven't already, I'd recommend checking out the first part, which we recorded a couple of weeks ago now, but that is available on our YouTube channel. This will also be recorded, and it will be available after the stream is ended as well. So don't feel like you're missing out if you can't stick around for the whole thing. My name is Tom Seed. I am the producer at Fireproof Games, and I'll be looking after the chat for the duration of the stream today. I think we're all set up and ready to go, so I'll pass you over to the guys, and yeah, let them get started. Enjoy the stream, everybody. Cheers.
Hi, everyone. I guess we should introduce ourselves again. My name is Jeremy Linares, and I was a designer on Room 4 Old Sins.
Hi, I'm Luke Coombes, and I was a programmer on Old Sins.
Hi all, I'm Tom Woodbridge, and I worked on Old Sins as a technical designer.
Cool. Now the formality is out of the way.
Yeah, let's get cracking again.
It was very formal.
Yeah.
Okay, so last time we, I believe, got up to the end of the kitchen, right? Yeah, that looks nice and closed.
Yeah.
Cool. And you've got your room game cup. That's what in my head. That's what it's called. It's going to be that forever. Room game
Eldritch thermos.
Yeah, it's sort of an urn, isn't it? Really.
It's an urn.
It's an urn. Yeah, cool.
All right.
So, Tom, you had the joy of putting this thing together, right?
Yeah, so the challenge is how to give the player a tiny, tiny flight of stairs in their inventory and make that an interesting thing to have in your inventory. And I thought the answer may involve folding it up so that it's effectively flat-packed, and then have the player figure out how to gradually piece it back together again. So this was one of those just very abstract puzzles that's really just a toy. It's about just playing with it until you realise what it wants you to do.
So that's another great sort of one that really transforms completely from start to finish. Like, it just starts off looking like fairly innocuous, and just it's a very fun little thing to play with.
Lots of moving bits on that one.
Yeah, it's yet another good example of how on earth are we going to make a puzzle out of this?
Yeah, there was a fair bit of that.
The staircase.
We had a railing, a balcony, balcony, stairs, an iron, things that should not be puzzles probably, but we. Right.
Those inventory puzzles also tended to push the limits of how fiddly it could get when playing on like a phone screen, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
So they were tricky.
So anyone who was in the last stream may remember I mentioned that, like, where in the lead up towards figuring out what game we were going to make, we had an idea. We had this idea of that we pursued around episodic room boxes that we would release on mobile, and how they would be sort of themed around different cultures. And one of those was going to be a Japan box, and that was the only box we sort of actually started on in earnest making. And how a lot of that stuff, whilst we didn't make those episodic room boxes, a lot of that stuff ended up in the game, and that's a big part of the reason why we have this room. But the other thing I would mention, and the thing that kind of made this okay, is that one of the houses that we based Waldergrave Manor on actually did have a Japan room in it. Much less impressive than this one, I have to say. But it was real, so...
True. We've got to ascribe some impressiveness points by virtue of the fact that it was real.
Yes. these shelves were inspired by real sort of Japanese shelves that we found during our research. And it was like, ooh, there's lots of compartments here. This is perfect. How much can we do?
Made for us.
How much? Yeah, exactly. It's like perfect for that. How much can we fit in here?
It's also gave the artists a chance to do some beautiful lacquer work and various other, nice bits of wooden engraving and patterns and things.
Yeah, lots of nice
really
illustrations
cool.
and.
Yeah, don't
really
often
cool.
get a chance to put a bit of figurative stuff into these devices, but this time we did.
If it's one thing that the artists of Fireproof have perfected over the years, it's making wood look really good.
Yeah.
So this octopus table, a little bit of a story behind it. We had this room mostly figured out, and we had the dragons back there behind us, and we had the shelves and this box, and for some reason I just had this feeling that the room felt a bit flat still, despite the giant dragons and all that, and it just needed like a little bit extra. And we didn't have time or room for more puzzles, but I thought it would be. I just had this idea of there's a lot of kind of like octopus imagery in Japanese art, around this period, and or older really, and it felt like it would be just so cool. The tentacles as well being a theme that we sort of go back to a lot in the room. It just seemed like a really good opportunity to do something a bit crazy, and I pitched it to the artists, and they were like, "Yeah, that'd be really cool." And Daisy, I'm pretty sure Daisy made this. She did a great job on it.
Yeah, it's cool.
But it also kind of like the tentacle wrapping around the box to kind of give you a bit more of a sense of progression. It was just like, okay, now the room feels complete.
Yeah, nice.
So this box that we're looking at was the Japan box from that older version, episodic version. A lot of things changed on it. There isn't as much on this box as there was on that one, because it's obviously part of a larger room. But it was always going to look like a sort of pagoda, and it was always going to be tiered in this way, and where the tiers rise out of each other. And Tom, that was your sort of the seashell gears, or card? Is it card? No, seashell gears. Yeah, that was yours.
Nautilus gears, I think they're called.
That's it. Yeah.
So named after the everyone's favourite mollusk. But, little Fibonacci spirals. It's barely even a puzzle, but it's just like a nice thing to interact with.
Well, it used to be a dual touch, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
This is inspired by InRow, right, which is another thing we came across while researching things which could go in this room. InRow, which apparently the internet tells me means a seal basket for storing your name seal in, your identity seal, and potentially other small items. We found some absolutely amazing images of these items. They were quite apparently they were a big deal in the Edo period. So it would be a traditional item of I think a man's costume in Japan at the time. So sort of 17th century perhaps, and a bit earlier and later. So and people collect them to this day because some of them are absolutely fantastic kind of pieces of craftsmanship. I think we found an example of one that had like animal sculptures, kind of, or just animal engravings all over the surface, and that kind of gave us the idea for this puzzle, which would be like a food chain type puzzle hidden inside here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I first came across these I think in the British Museum in London. Is it called the British Museum?
Yeah, the big one. The big one's British
The big
Museum.
one. I haven't left the house in a long time.
No.
That sounded very authoritative right up
Been
until that moment.
to London, yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time. But yeah, I remember seeing these, and it was like a fashion item.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Or rather, it became, it's a cool example of like how humans will find ways to beautify literally anything.
Yes.
It's like you said, it was like a name seal, and it could be used to hold medicine as well.
Yes, like
And
any other small things, money.
Yeah.
And it would hang from the belt because kimono, a bit lacking in pockets.
Right, yeah. It's kind of like a feudal Japanese wallet kind of thing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, before contactless was a thing.
Yeah. Oh, we should go and look at who's on the book.
Who's on the book?
Who's on the book? Oh, there he is.
It's sort of me, half of me anyway. But I'm a colonel, so
Colonel, yeah, it's decent rank. Someone in the chat said the inroads like a clutch. That makes so much sense. Kind of is. Fashion's a cycle, right? It just goes round and round.
Yeah, it just comes back.
So where are we in the story?
I think we missed. We must have missed one.
Yeah.
This is from the Curiosity Room.
Yes. Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, we did. I'm pretty sure we did miss one. But it's kind of like this is the key dramatic moment where Abigail has to make her choice, right? And I really wait, go on over to the next page because we've got another entry, don't we? Yes, I'm remembering now. Yeah, it's this is kind of one of the things that we were able to do because we were seeing it from two different perspectives. It was nice to have a bit of information that you knew maybe the other character didn't have, and getting things in bits and pieces for those who are so inclined, give them an opportunity to piece things together and maybe if you're really, really following the story kind of thing, see something that Abigail does and go, oh man, when Edward finds out about this, he's going to flip.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Okay, it's Harpoon time, isn't it?
It's Harpoon time.
Yeah.
So someone's saying in the mobile games, it doesn't matter what order you read the books, and the story is always told page by page. It's exactly the same in this one. The key thing is that if you miss a book, it will start you on the entry that you is after the last one you read. So you will always be at the right part of the story. And if you've missed a book, we kind of give you that entry, so you can never miss an entry.
Yeah, so the reason that happened was because we sealed a room with a book in it that we hadn't read. So it's a system that catches you up, which I had to write, which was really fiddly and still a bit confusing to interact with and hard to explain.
Yeah. I do wonder how many people kind of understand what's going on with the books, because it's quite a strange concept. Books which have had their contents erased, replaced with the inner thoughts of our protagonist.
Yeah.
Very cool. But I can see people potentially getting a little muddled if they're not paying attention.
It's okay, like you don't have to understand that stuff. If you're in it just for this, if you are interested in the story,
that's true.
You're just going to get deliver the story in a fairly. Oh, is that one open? I don't think that is open.
I'll grab I've just backed out. Hang on, I'll grab the bell and then we'll go back in.
Yeah. If you don't need to understand that stuff, you're just always going to be given the right story entry at the right time based on what you've read. You can't jump ahead by accident. You can't miss one.
It's perhaps much more confusing for us to discuss during development than it is for players to interact with. And I think the same can be said for the harpoon shooting the bell that we just saw, which where we really did go in circles kind of talking about that, because it's kind of pushing the limits of you're inside the house but you're looking outside the house and you see the outside from the inside, and does it look like a full house? Does it look like a full scale house? Does it still look like a dollhouse? There's loads of questions there which were kind of tricky to figure out.
But it's also kind of what makes it unique, right?
Absolutely.
It's very satisfying to see there's like, when you're inside the maritime room, it's this big, loud, giant bell. And when you go outside, it's a small thing that you can pick up.
Trinket, yeah.
That's the magic. That's fun about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to remember did we make a conscious effort to put in kind of, shall I say, more kind of loud, explosive moments and interactions, because there's quite a few throughout with the harpoon and the wrenching open the door in the submarine, and then also the strongbox that we're about to see. And I just really love those moments because it kind of punctuates all the small interactions that you're doing with something much bigger.
I wouldn't say it was conscious. I think we just like bombast.
Yes.
And so that bit, like shooting down the bell with the harpoon, like you said, we went around in circles trying to figure out what that was going to be for a long time. And we started off with the concept of liking the idea of having something visible on the outside of the house that was inaccessible. So for ages it was just called like the inaccessible room or something like that. It was just a vague concept.
That's true.
And we didn't know what it was going to be, and it didn't quite end up being that, because you don't know that you can pick up that bell, and it's okay. But that's kind of where it ended up. That was, I think, maybe the only way we could find to have something on the outside of the house that was like locked away, and then it ended up better in the end, I think, because it's cool to be inside a room interacting with something that's outside and then have to go back outside. It's just pushing the concept further.
Yeah, absolutely. It's worth the brain headaches to get that in, because that's really cool. A little bit of planetary action there.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing that just from my folder of gear reference material. There's lots of gears on this one.
This one on the side is insane. Isn't this based on a real thing as well? This ridiculous.
Well,
mechanism.
it's a mad thing. It's kind of based on just a few different bits and bobs that I kind of came across while researching interesting gears. Because obviously, if you're doing a gear puzzle, it's easy to make a boring gear. You've got to put in a bit of effort to make sure it's not a boring gear. So this is a combination of a Geneva drive, which is the kind of Maltese cross shaped thing up at the top, and just a rack and pinion. The Geneva drive is kind of interesting because it converts constant rotation into like intermittent rotation. Apparently, the internet tells me it was originally used in like watchmaking, which you can kind of understand just by looking at it. Yeah,
it's a beautiful mechanism.
Yeah, apparently it used to be used in also in film projectors, because you need to display 24 frames a second, and you need to leave that frame there for a little while, and then whip it away real quick and put in another frame. And so this kind of intermittent movement does that.
I see. Yeah, that's cool.
Again, it's just another thing that was like, it's fundamentally kind of nice to interact with this. So start with that, and then try to justify it as a puzzle.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of it was trying to create a panel puzzle which actually isn't just 2D, like, because we have a lot of puzzles which we call panel puzzles, which are single screen puzzles that fill the screen and the entire thing is on the screen and it's kind of two-dimensional, it's on a panel, and the gameplay is mostly 2D. So I was like, could we make a sort of panel puzzle which actually goes around the corner, as it were? Because it didn't need to be, it could have just been flat, but Just thought we'd make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit of spice to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is like going to be the most boring aspect. Don't do this just yet. Of kind of what you're talking about, Tom. But for anyone who's like really interested in the kind of minutiae of game development, something that's kind of interesting about the room is that like a massive part of putting these things together is like authoring the cameras. And by cameras, I don't just mean like the camera moves where things animate around and we show you like sort of cutscenes. Like every time you're at a puzzle station, or we call them faces. The cameras are like set up and authored completely differently for every single puzzle. All the limits are different. The way we've got a bunch of different types of cameras that we use, and it allows you, that flexibility allows you to do something like a puzzle that essentially takes place on a corner, or rather two sides of goes around a corner kind of thing, and it's that system has been in place since the very first game, and it allows just so much careful input from the player. It's extremely flexible.
It's very powerful for us when we're designing as well, because it allows us to really carefully direct the player's attention, because the camera does a lot of work in not only highlighting things but excluding things as well. So if you can't make the camera go to a certain place, then it helps channel the player towards relevant information, which is super useful.
There are definitely puzzles where I remember there was one on the desk where people would miss something. So it was like, all I had to do was just tweak a camera to kind of look a bit more in the direction of this thing, and that kind of fixed it.
Yeah. I also love the fact that the system was called Faces, because it is a reminder that the first game was kind of just about puzzle boxes, very pure, and it's like the face of a box, the face of a cube.
Yeah.
Actually, Luke, could you back out for a second? One thing a minor thing we forgot to point out. It's kind of funny, but if you look to the right, right now, over to the right, there's a wall missing, right? Which happened when the kitchen, the final thing you do in the kitchen, is pick up an item which was on the outside of this wall that we're looking at right now. What's kind of funny is before that wall folds down, there's like there's a newspaper clipping of Hugo Waldergrave and it kind of gives you a bit of background about his travels and adventures, and it was a cool opportunity to just give a bit of background about who this guy was who owns the house. But now it's gone, so you can't see it anymore. And if we had just put it on the left side, like where that light is, it would have been less of a problem. But
I never knew that fell victim to the folding wall. Wow.
Yeah, it was. I only realised after the fact. But
wow.
Waldergrave, by the way, the name Waldergrave was taken from a pub that was near me when I went to university. It just seemed like it was kind of the right element, right amount of creepy with the word grave in there, and it was a genuine name. So it was like, yeah, this is legit. This will work.
All right, pull out this box.
Here we go.
Yeah, man, love this. Love it. Again, this was from way back in the Japan box episodic days. This was the plan all along, I think, and it actually made it.
Yeah. This box was actually, it's inspired by Johnson. Wonderful reference for that.
Yeah, really beautiful stuff. And obviously, it's not kind of Japanese themed anymore, but still looked great. Also loved that there was a little window on the side of the box that you could peek in to see
Yeah.
the. If you haven't found the secret stuff to do with the radio by now, you have to play the game again. It's going away. There were so many camera moves and cutscenes in this game. I think they were the most of any of the room games we've done. I just remember spending so long animating cameras. Those end of room, like little paragraphs that come up, which kind of put a cap on the room you've just closed. They're functional. They're something we've always had in the previous games. Every time you would finish a room, you'd get a little thing saying, oh, you've done well, but there's more stuff coming. Will you be able to hack it? And at one point we talked about, well, what if we didn't have those things? What if we just the whole game is kind of one continuous thing. It has this house that persists throughout. Do we need them? And ultimately, it felt like the right choice to keep them in for a couple of reasons. One is that it gives you like a really good, solid break-off point. So if you're playing and you want to break and you finish a room and you get that sort of that screen showing you the text and obviously the goo creeping over the symbols, it's a really good time for someone to go, all right, if I know that if I just give it a break now, the game is kind of telling me it's a good time to do that. So it kind of serves as a pacing thing, but also the text there, which in this case is written from the perspective, like your perspective or the player character's perspective. Collector Hydrus. It was really fun to write. It's one of the few bits of like actual writing in the game that I did. And they're like really, really over the top, like purple prose dramatic. And that made them loads of fun to do. And also it kind of just every time is kind of reminding you, you're looking for the null. If you're not quite sure what on earth you're doing looking through this giant dollhouse and solving puzzles, don't worry. All you're really looking for is this mysterious thing. So just keep going. You're getting closer.
Yeah.
This was also based on a real thing, but I do this little fan thing, but man, I cannot remember.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, I think I remember there being like Japanese characters, like writing on the reference that I would have found. But man, if I can remember what this thing actually was, and obviously I stole it and made this kind of slightly strange puzzle out of it. But I'm gonna have to go back and find out where I got this from. Again, with the cameras, this is like a slightly unusual camera setup where you kind of have to move around between the back and the front, and it makes something that's essentially flat feel a bit more 3D,
Yeah, this is the kind of thing where if you get the pivot point in slightly the wrong place, just feels wrong. It's hard to put your finger on what exactly is wrong with it. So lots of finessing to get that all feeling good.
That was a sneaky one. I think a lot of people miss that. Because kind of the camera just goes past it and makes you look straight at that board. And I don't blame people for missing that. But we don't hide things too sneakily that often in this game, so... That pearl, I always wanted people to be like, finally, I've had this pearl forever.
Yeah, just waiting for the clam.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bit to talk about this. You had to deal with this, right, Luke?
Yes, it was challenging to implement, should we just say?
Yeah. So this whole thing with the little pagoda tower at the top came from the idea of trying to do item combining in the room within the the limitations of the room as a game design, because a really common thing in traditional point and click adventures is inventory item combining, right? Where you've got a grid of items, you can drag one item onto another, and that is how you end up with like the rubber chicken with a pulley in the middle from Monkey Island, whatever. And it's just not something that we do. So this entire thing was around what would we have to do to actually combine items in the room. And it turns out you'd have to do quite a lot.
Yes.
Of course, it's kind of taken to the nth degree where you have this one item that you're building up with in three separate stages. So it's not as simple as just munching two things together. But that was like the impetus of it. I just thought it'd be really cool to have this item that you take with you almost from the beginning of the level right to the end of it, and use it in multiple ways and build it and have this different thing that grows over the course of the level.
So I'm going to ask, why can you not just grab the icon of an item that's in your inventory and drag that over another icon for something else that's in your inventory? So there's a good reason.
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you're thinking of.
Well, apart from it not being in the previous games, and it would be an odd thing to introduce at this stage. But yeah, I think it's the sort of thing that was discussed probably at various stages, whereby the conclusion is always it's too hidden. First of all, you can forget that you can do it, and it also leads to a kind of almost a dominant strategy whereby you just want to attempt to combine every item with every other item. If it becomes established that that's a thing you can do, like the best way to play is to just try and combine everything with everything, just to see if it works, and that's not much fun.
No,
so,
yeah. Most of the time when I get frustrated with point and click games, it's because of that kind of thing where it's just the possibility space is so insane. Like,
yes, possibility space is a good word. It's like limiting that. So that if the possibility space is too big, then you do end up just kind of maybe brute forcing things or trial and error.
So this puzzle was, let's say, heavily inspired by what I'm pretty sure it's like the last dungeon in Skyward Sword. Sorry, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I don't know if Tom, I don't think you got that far. Luke, did you ever play Skyward Sword?
I never played Skyward Sword.
So I would say it's probably the best part of that game, where it was like it was kind of a dungeon with a bunch of different rooms, and you could move them around on this sort of little panel, and depending on how you arrange them, allowed you to get to different ones. So it's, when I say heavily inspired, it's heavily inspired. But that's the nature of a game where you have to have like a new puzzle every 30 seconds. And I think Now, I always swore I would never make a tile sliding puzzle because I hate them. I can't stand.
It doesn't really feel like that to me. There's
easy enough.
Yeah, there's enough free spaces on it that it doesn't feel too constrictive to move stuff around, and the puzzle is more like lining up the arrows, right, rather than like making a perfect pattern. And a lot of them you can do in 2 different ways. Like this one, I think you can do in 2 different ways, can't you? One of them you can do in that one. There you can do in 2 different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't going to be one of those things where people get lost just endlessly sliding tiles around and get frustrated about it. So that meant I was okay with putting a tile sliding puzzle in the game.
Just proved you can do it in 2 different ways.
Nice. Yeah.
Although it is possible to get it into a configuration where it can be a bit confusing to figure out how to solve it, but generally it's fairly straightforward.
It was a fun one to implement because basically is every time you go in, there's a bunch of big versions of these rooms that are kind of dynamically move around based on what you're doing in here, and they have to all line up perfectly, and you have to sort of set up the transitions between each room so that they dynamically connect to each other and stuff. Remember that being a lot of fun to actually implement. It's like a sort of shifting maze type thing, and making the art look right as well. Like, so all the lighting looks correct and everything. When you can combine all these rooms in whatever order you want and stuff. It's just, I think it holds together really well. Like, it looks like a seamless space when you go into it, right?
Totally does.
Yeah, it's looking great.
And of course, these are like full-size rooms.
Yeah.
We never scale the player down or anything like that.
We did in the VR one, but yeah.
That's a different. Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Because there was no other way to do it. But yeah, that was great fun.
But here, like, if you went into the Unity scene, you would see, the Japanese gallery in as we can see it here, and then beside the Japanese gallery, floating in space, these full size kind of tatami mat rooms. And below that, enormous dragons. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was so much mad tech behind that. Goodness me.
On the occasions where the camera would go wrong and you would glimpse these massive, huge versions of these things outside in the world, it would be quite dizzy.
So you have a tiny peek behind the curtain. It's extremely frightening.
Animating these tentacles was not fun.
It looks wicked though, so
yeah,
I think it's worth it in the end.
It was. It was funny. It's because the tentacles got made with these joints, and I never felt like we really had enough time to go back and change the way the joints were laid out. So I just thought, well, I'll just make it work, and with enough cajoling, managed it. Also, there's a bit of like my introduction to animating the camera here, where you can get away with a lot when you know where the camera is going to be. So there are places where the tentacles are kind of clipping into the box and into each other and stuff, but because the camera is at a particular angle, you can't see that stuff, and it's all secret, and it's perfect, and no one will ever know.
Yep.
Right, so actually opening up the final room now, aren't we?
Drum roll.
I love this. I love the way this opens.
Yes, very satisfying mechanism.
This was one of those things where it's like, ooh, how are we going to make this interesting? It's like such a small item to place, it's almost a toothpick, right? And then, come up with this quite elaborate opening sequence.
The other thing is, obviously, it's the only room you go into like vertically, but also you really get to see how everything shoots out the portal because normally you don't have this kind of like amount of play in the camera around a room, but you can kind of go down quite low and then you see everything come out, and it's pretty cool.
Nice.
This is looking fantastic, folks.
Of course, because Tom, you haven't. This is like your first time through the game since you made it, probably.
For the PC version, right? Since we made the
this is my first eyes on with the new amazing version. So it's just looking great, and this room, I guess, by the nature of it, lends itself to a glow up like this.
Yeah.
Lots of great
Rack and Mead there. So
the duo.
Yeah, Dave Rack's a senior artist and one of the directors of the company, and Barry Mead's another one of our directors as well.
He is the person. If anyone ever does, if you ever seen anyone Fireproof giving interviews, it will normally be Barry.
Yeah. He's the showbiz guy. He's the showbiz front of our company.
We are a very showbiz kind of company.
There we go. Cool. And then we immediately...
Those Rorschach images in the middle are getting a bit spookier.
Yeah. These Faberge eggs are super nice.
They are cool. This is another situation where we were like, can we get away with something as slightly absurd as putting eggs in the room? There is nothing spooky about an egg. It's, but...
It's Lovecraft 101. There's nothing spooky about an egg.
It's like rule number 1 of writing horror. Just leave the eggs out of it. But I think it's one of those things when something is done up as like immaculately and intricately as that Faberge egg. Let's take a look at it in the inventory, because it does look super nice. Yeah, it's like
I'd say it's a little spooky, giant insects and such.
I'm not thinking about like toast soldiers or Easter at the moment. It's
absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember where the eggs originated in terms of why was it eggs? I presume it was because we were planning to put items all around the house, which are all the same type of item, and you'd have to find where to place them in all the different rooms, and that was going to be kind of a late game puzzle because it uses a bunch of different rooms at once. And I guess it's like an Easter egg hunt, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Maybe that's why it felt right to be eggs as opposed to anything else.
It's Easter like next week, right?
Oh my god! Maybe this was in the cards all along, guys.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a grand plan. I mean, originally I remember when at the very, very beginning of this idea, Tom, you had this kind of concept of, again, the bones are kind of there, but maybe the flesh is different. This idea of, it was a while back. There was kind of that there would be paintings around the house which showed you where certain innocuous items are supposed to go. And that kind of actually we didn't look at the image in the Japanese gallery which tells you where this egg is supposed to go.
Sorry. Yes, I should be looking at those.
So, all right. And for whatever reason, I remember talking about, what if we had like a bowl of fruit in one of the rooms, and then you found like an apple, and the apple goes in the bowl of fruit, and sort of vague stuff like that. The type of stuff you talk about when you're not entirely sure what a concept is yet. And ultimately, as much as possible, we wanted to we needed to have a situation where there were sockets and places you could put these items in, which were fairly ignorable, and maybe ideally you hadn't necessarily noticed them beforehand. I'm sure a lot of people did, but they were hopefully hopefully people would use these images to figure out where the eggs were supposed to go, instead of just going to every socket in the house and just trying each one. So it was a bit of a risk.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a brute forcible thing potentially. So it has to be tuned just right. It's an ambient puzzle which runs the risk of either being too obvious or not obvious enough, or brute forcible, as you say.
I think it. I don't know about you, Tom, but this is one puzzle that I maybe, if we'd had more time, would have got another iteration.
Yeah, I think we never quite stopped thinking about it, right? There was always the potential other ways of doing it, like, what if you find all the eggs at once and you have to run around deciding where to put them? Like, there are various other ways of doing it. One detail that's cool here is the insects on each egg, which is also drawn onto the hint panels. I believe that was that an addition when we realised that we couldn't rely on colour alone.
Yep, because of any colourblind players.
Yeah, so it needs more than just colour as a clue, which is a thing that we've in mind. But it ends up being cooler, right? Because we've got this extra bit of imagery.
It's the thing it's the bugs that make the eggs not lame and look cool. So they add the creepy back in.
Yes. They move the concept.
Hey there, guys.
Hey. Oh, have we lost Luke?
You've lost all audio? Oh, no, I think you're back now.
For how long?
Hello, testing.
It's all good, I think.
So, well, it was definitely the most interesting part of the entire stream, and I don't think we can go back to it. So,
sorry, it's just for like 30 seconds.
Okay, what were we talking about? Eggs, I think, really.
Talking eggs.
Talking eggs. I don't think there's anything too special. Nothing to see here.
Is the acorn engraving enough of a clue to direct people here?
I think so.
I hope so.
I love this. Tony, I think, made this.
Yeah, amazing.
What was it based on?
It's a green man face, which is something I really wanted to get into the garden because it's just a really evocative piece of imagery that everyone kind of vaguely recognises. Like everyone's seen a green man, engraved in a church somewhere. But it's also inherently mysterious because nobody's quite sure where it originated from, and it's kind of can be found all over the world. Apparently, they had a big resurgence in Britain in the 19th century. Everyone was all about the green man imagery, so very appropriate to put here. At one point, I think the piece that you placed in the green man was going to be like his eye, and then it was like, no, we can't have another eye. we've got a few placeable eyes already.
I think, we ended up having like 3 or 4 eyes or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, 2 octopus eyes. There's an eye in the curiosity room. I don't think there's no real reason for that. They're just eyes are creepy. Something that might be interesting to talk about, I thought, before we go into this maybe, is water in this room and how much fun it is to do water in video games. Right?
Oh my! I'm still feeling, blessed that we were permitted to put a giant fountain in the middle of this room, because the amount of work that created, for Lyndon and for everyone really, it's formidable, I'd say.
Yeah. So I can talk about that, how that works briefly if you want.
Yeah, do it. Go for it.
So the way Lyndon did this is he did like a really, really in-depth water simulation in some software, I don't know, but basically, yeah, maybe, and sort of rendered that out into like a video. And so we basically then sort of played a video that basically kind of there's a thing called billboarding, where it effectively is always pointing at the player no matter where you go, and then it's sort of very cleverly blended, sort of has some transparency to it, so it blends in with the background, and then some particle effects on top, which all the splashes are particle effects on top. It all kind of marries together and it looks just amazing. And that's the same tech we used on the mobile version as it's on the PC, and it still totally holds up.
Yeah, absolutely, and primarily it holds up thanks again to our camera system being very, very controllable, and we can make sure the player looks at it from certain angles, which helps us a lot for this kind of thing. Like if you were able to orbit around this fountain.
You can't actually.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of locked down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. As it needs to be.
Yeah, because it looked funny from some angles. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. So there's the billboard like you talked about. There's the VFX going off. There's the rippling water in the bottom, which is like it's
separate thing. Yeah, it's just a
that would be like a mesh that's heavily cut up into squares, essentially segmented, which is sort of deforming. Plus, they're like scrolling textures, right, in the little channels that lead from the to sell it even further. Leaves. Yeah. And then also the water underneath the water wheel there, that's the same tech.
That's the same tech. That's actually a video being played like on a mesh.
Yeah, it's. I think it's really interesting because it is just like a bunch of different techniques munched together to create what looks like fluid flowing water. There's no simulation or anything like that going on in real time in the game, at least. Even if maybe like you said, the fountain was a simulation at some point in different software.
Design-wise, the water is still coming from the kitchen. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So the player must have set it up correctly to connect the kitchen water supply to the garden before closing the kitchen. I'm just trying to remember exactly the detail of that.
This happened this time and not the first time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Does that mean we're all back?
Yeah, are we good?
Am I back?
Alright, fantastic. What were we talking about?
Sorry guys, Really sorry. Basically, what happened there is I was wearing a set of Bluetooth headphones that kept dying on me, and when they run out of battery, the whole stream goes dead. So that was cool.
It's looking like we're really quiet.
Do we need volume adjustments?
Okay, 1 second. You guys carry on talking.
Apparently we're the ones that sound quite far away. So what we were talking about was how the Spirograph puzzles are actually the key to all of the mysteries in the room games. But again, I don't really feel like we should go over that again, just to keep things moving. They're just good puzzles.
I've heard that we are very, very quiet still. Not be heard yet.
Yeah, well, I guess that's why we've got to keep talking until gets it done. Tom says we're trapped in the dollhouse and then trying to get pulled out. It's nice and colourful way of saying we're stuck in.
Is it Eldritch forces?
Is it?
A Bluetooth headset.
They're not that far away from each other.
I mean, it's pretty close, isn't it?
It is. Well, man, I'm looking at the chat and it seems like we are quiet enough that they cannot even understand what we're saying. So, I guess we can just say whatever we want then. No.
That's the kind of thing that never backfires.
Yeah, but... should we put? I mean, I could try putting my.
Is there anything we can do? Yeah, in a sense.
I don't know. We're kind of adrift in this. We could try getting out of the Discord and coming back in.
Classic turn it off and on again.
Yes. Let's try that.
Is that something? Is that recommended?
Any method by any chance?
Sounds the same to me.
It's the same. I'm not sure how to fix this at the moment. Sorry, guys.
It's all a bit bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not getting any sound from the game or from Discord or anything.
Oh, right.
Oh, really? Oh, my. Bluetooth headset really caused an upset.
Maybe we just have to turn it all off and on again. Yeah. It's the only thing I can think to do.
Again, is the only strat I know for such situations.
What if we tried going through Tom? No, probably not. No, because we can't do that because he's not going to have us playing through the same place.
I think they should be able to hear you now. There might be echo. Can you guys hear any echo?
Can anyone hear us? Is it better?
Hello, testing.
Luke, can you mute the audio for the stream?
It's better? They're saying it's better.
Like
Okay, if you guys can hear us, then that's all good.
Am I here, or am I still trapped inside the dollhouse?
I've put my volume up. I don't know if that is going to help.
Have you done that?
Just in audio and video settings in Discord.
Yeah, okay, I think we're good. It's
Yeah.
okay. Alright, that's cool. Sorry, guys. Very sorry about that.
Yes, very sorry. Like someone said, it's apparently easier to make a whole video game than it is just to do a single stream. Amazing work by Luke for live tech support.
Oh, man. So much panic.
So stressful.
Always charge your Bluetooth headsets before you go on stream, guys. That's what I've learned today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay. So these, let's pretend nothing happened. These Spirograph puzzles, Tom, they're awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So these puzzles came out of looking at lots and lots of reference material of kind of interesting masonry and interesting kind of bits of the exterior of Victorian buildings, and finding a lot of just intriguing symbols like quatrefoils, triquetra, Celtic knots. These kind of symbols that everyone vaguely would recognise, but nobody's quite sure what the meaning is in most cases. And a lot of the symbols are like, pretty ancient. They are sort of, some of them are a little bit pagan around the edges. And so I was thinking it would be really cool to have a puzzle or a set of puzzles which doesn't just use those symbols and shapes as a kind of as a decoration, but are actually part of the puzzle fundamentally. Like, could you even create those shapes? And that's kind of also part of like a broader thing, whereby I was really keen to get some like slightly more organic interactions into the game, because the classic room interaction is like very mechanical, right? Like sliders, latches, crank handles. So to get some sort of more organic shapes in there, I thought would be an interesting change. It would be kind of cool. So this is a slightly bizarre thing that I came up with, which is a way of approaching that. And yeah, it's you probably recognise it just as a spirograph. Which,
Yes, bunch all that really interesting stuff together with like a toy from the 80s.
Yes,
or
indeed.
whenever it was from.
Which I actually just looked up to remind myself about this, and it turns out it's not a toy from the 80s, or it was, but it predates that. It was back in the early 19th century that
What?
an engineer/architect came up with it.
Wow.
And it wasn't designed as a toy either. His idea for this thing, it was like a device which would draw curves, which are, the internet tells me that they're called hypotrochoid curves. His idea for what this device would be useful for is drawing curves which are so elaborate and kind of tricky to reproduce that they can be used to prevent counterfeiting on banknotes.
Wow. Okay.
So you could like use this mechanism to put an incredibly elaborate spiral on a banknote, and unless you have the same mechanism, you can't reproduce it perfectly. So yeah, it wasn't a toy originally. These are hypotrochoid mechanisms, but this version here is very obviously toy-like.
There are a lot of really, really complex things in history that then get sort of watered down into basic entertainment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And obviously, you get a cool trail renderer on there.
Yeah.
You did this stuff, right? Luke, you figured out how to get this.
Yeah.
looking the way it does.
Yeah, I mean, the hard work was done by Tom. Like, I basically, Tom showed me I don't know how much of it Tom made himself actually, but basically I seem to remember putting it together, putting all the numbers in that he told me to put in, and then playing with it and was like, my God, it just looks amazing. It just makes all the patterns and everything. I couldn't
figure out the gearing and the ratios and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. Because you make all these funky shapes and they all look pleasing. All the shapes look nice, even if they're wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of dawned on me that's very much the kind of puzzle I gravitate towards, is the ones where it's kind of a toy, and even if you're doing it wrong, it's still kind of fun.
Yeah.
The process of solving it is very much the process of just like playing around with it. So it's kind of a playful thing.
Yeah, I remember talking about, like, should this be? I remember you asking me, or not being sure, like, is this too trial and error, or is this like not enough of a puzzle?
Yeah, I was really worried about it.
Yeah, but ultimately, it's just fun to mess around with, and that kind of makes it okay.
Because it is trial and error, really. You're just kind of messing about with these things. But yeah, as you say, if the payoff is satisfying enough, then it kind of doesn't matter.
This is one of those moments. Where I was just very excited about the idea of. I think this was your idea, Tom. Not for the puzzle necessarily, but for how the urn would rise up out of it. And just being like, oh, we haven't done that before. That would be cool.
Yeah.
You gotta latch onto those moments when it's something that's actually new.
Yeah.
4 games in.
This was a scrying bowl, wasn't it?
Scrying bowl.
Yes.
Oh,
how do you make a puzzle out of a scrying bowl?
Yeah. Is it going to show you your future? Or just show you a puzzle?
I think we did.
The tech for this was kind of mental. Like, I don't think I did it, but it's based on our kind of portal thing that we use all over the place, right? Like we use for the submarine window and everything like that. But mostly with those things, you interact with stuff on the outside and it affects things that are inside it, and you just kind of see a video of something that's happening. But on this one, you've got like full camera control and you can move around inside of it, which we hadn't really done that much of before, I don't think. So it's like an absolutely crazy setup. And took loads and loads of math.
It's like playing. It's like, I don't know. It's like going and playing, like a Game Boy inside a console game or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
Yeah, it's like that's how the setup is.
Yeah, it's asking someone to make a shader, which is it's a water shader. It's going to move. It's going to refract. And it also turns into a portal, which shows you another world, and continues to wobble while it does that. It's like, oh my. Yeah, it's a big arm.
Yeah, the whole thing's shimmering, right? Yeah.
When you tap on it, it does wobble, doesn't it? Like it ripples. The water ripples if you tap on it.
Oh my god, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
If you don't have the eyepiece on,
Yeah.
And, this is where it comes out, and it starts off underwater.
Transition.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The water looks great. I don't know, if you tap the water now, does it ripple? Probably not.
Probably not now. No, before it, it does. It totally does still.
Oh,
still?
nice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You see, that is the type of attention to detail that accidentally happens sometimes in these games.
Yeah.
Somebody would have had to add that interaction to this face. So somebody thought.
Yeah. That's. I realized as soon as I said, will it wobble, which will be the next YouTube channel that we open up. I was like, oh no, if it doesn't, it'll be a bit embarrassing. Yes.
We'd never have lived it down. Would have been more embarrassing than my Bluetooth headphone problem.
The turning the fountain water black was one of those moments where it's just like, oh, that would look really cool, and it would be really easy to do. The shader already allows for it, so it's just.
I was very excited when you said we were going to do that, because I was like, this is late in the day. We can do this. Yeah, it's simple. It looks awesome.
Cool. Another one down.
We're making progress. Yeah, this is like one thing we said last time was how there was this massive gap between like the foyer closing and the next room closing, the study, and now it's just room after room, which is pretty cool. That the pace sort of goes up significantly.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Like it's fun.
Yeah, the pacing of our games has always been all over the place, so it's
it's almost impossible to like.
It's half of the course. It's what the fans expect.
Get that right.
One more attempt to get something organic and natural in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was always on team. More faces, more eyeballs, more creatures.
Yeah.
I just find them really memorable and kind of interesting to use in the form of keys.
Yeah, I really liked in the room 3 we had those. There was a whole set of those, wasn't there, in the lighthouse level, where you've got like those different animals that you play around with inside those super zooms.
Yeah, those were mine actually.
Oh really? I didn't know that. Yeah, those were great.
They kind of weren't like hard puzzles, but you know what's funny? I think those might have been kind of inspired by Japanese puzzle boxes as well. There's a lot of amazing. There's kind of a long tradition of Japanese puzzle boxes, and I'm pretty sure that I found some great reference. Although those were designed from scratch, those weren't based on real puzzle boxes that I'd seen. But I really liked the idea of just these fun little interactions, which are also parts of animals, as opposed to like a switch or something abstract. It's like
it's always going to be more memorable than something abstract, most likely, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I have to say, it warms my heart to see these dragons looking so cool. The remake version is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, this is
a good example of this type of puzzle is the type of thing that I couldn't have designed because, Tom, you made a prototype for this in Maya, didn't you?
Yes, indeed. Which was at the time it was very much like there's no way we're really going to do this, but it's kind of an interesting thing to play around with. So let's just see where it goes. It kind of came from the point I kind of made earlier about wanting to have some more organic interactions in the game, and also some interactions which feel fundamentally different to things which were in the previous games. Because one of the kind of concerns I had when we were starting development was, okay, it's the 4th game in the series. We don't want players to feel like they've kind of seen it before. It has to feel different, has to feel kind of fresh. And the games do have a library of kind of interactions like latches and sliders and cranks and keys, which use the same code. Whenever you come across a key, it's kind of a set of the same components. So they all kind of feel a little similar, although they all look different, obviously. So it's nice to sprinkle in occasionally something which isn't based on any of those archetypal interactions. It's like something completely different. So it was very much, this came out of how can we come up with something that really feels very unlike other interactions in the game, and ideally feels kind of a bit organic as well, because that would be really interesting. And yeah, the prototype was made in Maya. It was like a very, very badly modelled white box dragon, which I made. and yeah, all you could do with it is move the head around, and the body would kind of change its pose to retain a kind of sculptural pose, regardless of where the head would be left. And that's all it did. And you just interact with it in Maya in the viewport, and there was no puzzle there at all. But even at that stage, it was like, yeah, there's something cool about this. It's kind of fun, just to move the head of this dragon around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the hard work began. Okay, we have to justify this. Like, okay, you can move the dragon's head around, but why would you want to move the dragon's head around? What are you achieving by doing that? And so there's an enormous amount of like gears followed trying to create things for these dragons to do to justify it.
Yeah, cool.
It is I think probably the most elaborate puzzle in any of the room games.
It might have ended up being that way. It wasn't intended to be from the start, but I guess just because it came in, it's like late in the game, and we want the puzzles now to really step up a notch. So it would be cool to have this puzzle use all of the tools which the player has, including the eyepiece, the holograms, and the super zoom. So all of these things being used in a single puzzle ended up being the goal. It wasn't initially, but that's what it ended up.
And the last bit was a dual touch puzzle as well, so it was
yeah,
it's like everything in one. So
I believe it was Pagoda who did the
yeah.
actual really hard implementation for this stuff, making these dragons interactive in the hologram view, which mind-bogglingly difficult, I'm sure, just to make sure there are no weird edge cases and make sure it's robust.
Yeah. Did all of the sort of driving all the animations and everything from like this kind of input. But yeah, so this is one of the big ones that actually changed for the PC version, right? Because this used to be you used to be able to sort of grab each one independently with on the iPad version. But you couldn't do that on the PC one, so we changed this puzzle slightly so that when you move one, the other one moves, and it ended up basically with this really awesome kind of tug of war type interaction between the two, which is really fun. They're kind of having like a cool little dance.
Yeah, they look like they're facing off or like sizing each other up.
Yeah, totally. It's really fun.
It's the first time I've seen this version.
Yeah, I was really pleased with how that sort of kind of turned out. Because obviously, we needed a way to sort of... So now what you do is you clamp one shut, and then you go over to the other one, and then that can't move.
Yeah. Great. This is very much from the same kind of folder as the wrenching the door off the submarine puzzle. It's like a moment where you just use power to break something, which is
brute force.
Uncharacteristic for puzzles, but nice to have that occasionally.
Yeah, because I'm often like, this is a really fiddly little drawer. Why wouldn't you just smash it open? So it's kind of
you never ask that question.
Yeah,
I know.
Ask that question.
As soon as you ask that question,
you don't want to pull on that thread, right?
Yeah, you don't exactly. Like, why don't you just hit it with a hammer?
I was always super keen on the idea that you never see the dragons like deform, like the metal version of the dragon never deforms, and you don't see any kind of hinges on it either, on the body of it. So it's always a little bit mysterious as to whether it actually deforms or if it just is.
Don't pick it up yet. Don't pick it up yet.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You haven't. It's cool. Like I love that you're like up close with the dragons here. They look awesome. At one point, we wanted to let you like take something out of their mouths.
Yes.
But it just never quite didn't quite work out.
I walked from inside the.
Yes, from inside. Yeah. I just wanted to get because the models look so cool. Tony did a great job on them. I just wanted to get like as up close as possible with them. At one point, it was like, "What if you could like screw off one of their teeth or something like that?"
Oh, yeah, of course.
But it just did not fit into the rest of the level.
We still got up close and personal with the dragons in the super zoom, so I'm happy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was trying to find the reference material that kind of was behind those. I think there's some. I think you can find the dragon fountain, which was the primary inspiration for that.
That was
an amazing looking thing.
It is.
Yes, it's in. The internet tells me it's near Renoji Temple in Nikko National Park, and it's just a small fountain, but with this amazing looking green copper dragon wrapped around it.
So we've finally got this. This box ended up being so tall that it was really hard to just like set up the camera. It's massive. the funny thing about this box was that in my head, the second box in the room 1 was massive. Like, it was this massive thing the size of like a dining table. And I remember talking to Mark about it, our design director. He's like, no, it's supposed to be like, I don't know, the size of. I'm blanking on a good equivalent size thing, but maybe something that's like about a foot tall or something. And it's because scale in these games can be a bit weird if you don't have reference points or maybe you're not paying enough attention. I thought, I know, it would be cool to have a box that is actually as big as I thought. the box.
That was.
It is
it's
huge.
Massive. Like, it's really big. It's taller than a person, probably.
Yeah. And this is one of the key differences between designing for the screen and designing for VR as well, right?
That's true.
Like, if you were standing next to this in VR, you wouldn't be able to reach this stuff up on the
Yeah,
top.
yeah.
That's true. As soon as you have a camera move, like an animated camera move in like a flat screen game, that's something that can't be done in VR, and that it's loads of extra sort of very careful placements and layout stuff has to be done for like for when we made the room VR, which is a year old today.
Yeah, it is. Happy birthday.
Like the thought, whilst they share a lot in common, there are so many things that work in a flat screen version which just don't work in VR, and vice versa. And whenever you're making a game for any format, you want to make as much of a use of the things that format gives you, and that obviously ends up excluding other formats.
Yeah. Really use the strengths of whatever the interface is.
Yeah, totally.
This puzzle was actually the very first puzzle I designed after the Room 3 was finished.
Oh, right, I didn't know that.
We started looking at new things, and we were like going to do this Japan box. This was the very first thing I did, and it remained mostly unchanged apart from some key like art and sort of messaging things to help players understand better what on earth is going on, because it's a bit of a weird one, to be honest.
It's sort of a circuit, but sort of not.
Yeah. It is a bit strange.
Yeah. Bye Japan room.
Indeed. Yeah, it's been a journey. I've seen a lot of people say that this is their favourite room.
Yeah, it's one of the most visually amazing ones.
Very nice to hear. And also, I was worried that this was like, are people going to get to this room and be like, what is this room doing in a Victorian house? This feels really out of place. But people seem to just feel like it's a really good sort of a really good break and change from kind of the Victoriana that tends to populate the other rooms, right?
It's just a nice, refreshing like palette change in terms of colours and everything.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And also, it was kind of like Tom and I worked together pretty closely on the study, which was like one of the first big rooms that we tackled, and then we kind of split up a little bit, where I did the Curiosity room mostly, and he did the Maritime room mostly, and then the Japanese gallery ended up being a good combination of stuff that we had both done. All right, so this is a great puzzle.
This is an absolutely mad puzzle, and it's another one that kind of exemplifies all of the kind of what we were going for with this game, right? The kind of the concept of stuff inside the rooms changing stuff outside the rooms, and kind of.
Mm-hmm. I think this was probably one of the very first things that was like written on a piece of paper, like on a brainstorm. Like what if there's a room which you can like rotate the entire room, and then leave that idea there because we don't really know how to do that for a long time, and then eventually come back to it, figure out how to actually do it.
Yeah, I didn't know you could rotate these things in the inventory. That's cool.
Yeah.
Did that go in? Was that new?
No,
Was that always that way?
Always that way. There's like 3 different ways you can solve this. It's crazy. Yeah, you can bring it in here and do it, because I always get it wrong. I always get one of the leaves wrong, so I was coming here to do it.
A moment to salute the hint system.
Yeah.
Oh man, don't even talk about the hints. I forgot about the hints. Okay, so we can talk about the hints a little bit, actually. I don't think we talked about it last time. But something that people might not realize, I didn't realize it, like when I first joined Fireproof, is that every single interaction in the game has a hint attached to it.
More than one, usually.
Yeah, normally more than one.
Up to 3, right?
Up to 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone, I'm sure most people have used the hint system at least once.
Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, so like no matter how obvious an interaction is, even if it's just a camera moves you towards a switch and there's a switch and it needs to be flipped, there is a hint. There's a hint for that. That just says something stupid like, oh, there's a switch on that panel that I should probably flick. I tend to be the one, since room 2, I have written all their hints for all the games, and it's a process.
Yeah, it's a process. It's because it's not as straightforward as just attaching text to every interaction, because it also needs to be kind of aware of context, right? Like often there are multiple threads the player could be pulling on at any given moment, and the hint system should really be context aware and tell them which thread to go to, which would benefit them the most, you know. And sometimes, if we've really made life difficult for ourselves, then it's possible to progress into a puzzle a little way and then backtrack and like undo some progress that you've previously made. I think the dragons were pretty bad for that. So you could like unhook the jaws on the dragons, and the hint system needs to accommodate that as well. It needs to kind of ideally, it's kind of like having kind of a buddy sitting with you who has watched you up until this point play the game and knows kind of what you're stuck on and can give you just the right level of hint, which is what we kind of aim for with it. But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, this one was especially hard because you can this puzzle with the art room, you can kind of do a lot of things in different orders, and it has to know what you've done and what you should do next, and point in the right direction. And on top of that, the house can be positioned in different ways. It can be in the right position, or it might not be in the right position. So there are all these variables that just made it really confusing to set up.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah.
Some people are asking if we hide anything in the hints and if there's any Easter eggs.
There is one Easter egg.
I knew there was definitely
As far as I'm
one.
aware, actually I would know because I wrote them all, but as far as I'm aware, there is only one Easter egg in one hidden thing in any of the hints, and we should do it at the end of the game.
We'll get
Yeah,
to
totally.
Yeah.
That's the one I was thinking of, so that's good. We haven't missed it. There's one. We'll show you guys. People were really bummed out that we didn't show them the hidden radio message last time.
I'm sorry. So before you do this, don't do it.
All right.
Oh, it's okay. We're all right. Yeah. We should talk about how we actually do the spinning, tower, right? Because obviously you can rotate the angle of the tower to whatever you want, and if you go and look out the window, it's changed. But the cool thing, what I think is cool actually, is that the way we implemented it is actually really straightforward. And I could be misremembering it. I don't know if you took a look at the way this was set up, Luke.
I think I did some of it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's like, this is how I remember it. We have a thing. The rotating tower kind of has segments to it. You can't just leave it wherever you want, right? And the way I remember it working was, depending on how whatever segment you left the tower on, when you go into the room, there was a blackboard system, right, which would which could read variables.
Yeah.
And we would have a thing which said, okay, which segment did you leave the tower on when you were outside?
Yeah.
And then there was like another rotating object, which was everything outside the room,
Yeah.
which was also on like this rotator on segments.
Yeah.
Which is something you normally interact with, but in this case, it was just used to to drive the outside of the room. So in short, when you're inside the art room, the art room doesn't actually rotate, but the dollhouse rotates around it.
Yeah, it's the trick we use everywhere, basically in some form, just moving everything around the player rather than, because it's just easier most of the time.
Yes.
And it looks exactly the same.
It does. You never know.
Yeah.
Because rotating everything in a room, which has all been very carefully set up, is just asking for trouble.
Yeah. Upgraded version of this effect.
Yeah, yeah. Dave Smethers, our graphics genius, did a bit of magic on that to make it a bit more fancy. Yeah.
This room is kind of it's very small, but it's quite like narratively loaded, right?
Yeah.
This was like meant to be Abigail's kind of refuge. So this key is also pretty has a cool bit of trivia attached to it. Do you wanna tell me about that, Tom?
Am I right in saying that this is the only key in the game?
It is.
It is, yes. Yeah, it's the only key in the game, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the room games often have like there are a lot of small keys that you find in these games, right? And I think we made a little pact with each other when we started it, where we kind of said we're gonna not put any keys in this game.
Yeah.
We're gonna challenge ourselves to just not have any. We'd used up our kind of like generic sort of puzzle quota with gears, so we were like, we have to not that they were generic puzzles, but you know what I mean. So we used up our traditional room puzzle thing with gears. So we're gonna see if we can skip all the keys and come up with crazier, more interesting things for every single item that you pick up.
Yeah, the theory being that if we ban keys, then we're forced to come up with things which are a bit weirder and potentially more memorable.
And it's styled like a swan, which is Abigail's kind of like her kind of special animal.
Yeah, cool.
I think the key ban is why we ended up with like 4 eyeballs.
Yeah, we replaced all the
gosh.
keys with eyeballs.
Oh my gosh, I'd never thought about that.
So many eyeballs. Cool.
But also, it felt like so even though we banned keys, it felt like really appropriate to have like just a single key, which opens this wardrobe and leads to kind of like an interesting thematic narrative moment. Like it felt like a good place to break our key ban and
yeah, sure. Just a quick look at this book. So this is Rob Dodd and Dave Smethers. So Rob Dodd was the guy who basically invented the Room 1. So he did all the code for the Room 1. He's our technical director. So it's him and Mark Hamilton who did the Room 1. Basically, those two guys did most of the initial work for it, definitely. And Dave Smethers did all of the... He's been with the company since Room 2, I think. Or maybe Room 3? Room 2. And he did all of the cool graphic stuff on the PC version. So he wrote our entire graphics pipeline, basically, for the Old Sins PC.
Yes, so principles and fundamentals of perspective.
Yeah, that's what I associate with those two guys.
You know what might be, I mean, this is kind of a bit of a deep cut, I guess, not necessarily into the room, but game development. I see a lot of comments from people sometimes criticizing games made in Unity, right? They're like, oh, that looks like a Unity game, or, you know, all Unity games have these problems. and the room has always been made in Unity, and plays and looks great as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's just, it's not the tools, it's the people who use them. And we have a lot of very talented people at Fireproof who do great work with Unity and make things that look like this. So that's like a little myth that always bugs me.
Yeah.
It's like, no, look, if you have people who know what they're doing, they can make great stuff. This was one of those ideas where it was like, this would be so cool to do.
Great.
No one's ever going to go for it. No one's ever going to want to put in all the work to get this done. But they did. They were up for it. Because it's not a puzzle. It's just a cool moment. It's like a set piece, essentially.
Someone's raised a really good point in the chat, which is the problem with Unity is that only the cheaply made bad Unity games have the Unity logo at the beginning.
That is a really sad truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic problem, isn't it?
It's a classic problem.
It becomes self-fulfilling, the idea that Unity games have a certain look, because those are the only ones that you recognise as Unity games. Right?
They curse themselves with their own splash screen, Unity.
Yeah. So the concept behind this, of course, was that you see this little almost comic book sequence play out where Edward just trashes the room, and then you turn around and it all happens.
It's trashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's like, did that just happen right behind me? That's super creepy.
Yeah. The audio again really sells it. And,
yeah.
It's kind of a companion piece to the spooky cutscene that you see within the eye of the anatomical model.
Yeah, for sure. We have these for the first time. I mean, we had the craftsman, but we have these characters with who weren't just kind of shadowy sort of people leading you through an elaborate trial, which is kind of the role that the craftsman played. We have these people with flaws and who get angry and lose their temper and all that kind of stuff. And it's if you want to have a story with that kind of stuff, it's nice to show, have moments where their emotions get the better of them, and we can have a way of showing those dramatic moments in a more visual way and a more sort of active way.
I love that line.
Yeah, because I mean, I really started to think about this house as being because it's so interconnected, and I remember thinking about I think I wrote in the little bit of text after you've done the kitchen, I kind of compared it to a kind of like the circulatory system of the house, right? The heart beating and pumping water around. And I kind of like the idea of reading that metaphor as like, this is the monster you're slaying, right?
Yeah. I love this sequence which is coming up. The finale. If there's anyone who is watching who hasn't played the game and wants to save this for their own playthrough,
yeah,
here be spoilers.
I mean, arguably, you've played the game by this point. It's a little bit late.
Yeah,
But yeah, this is the point of no return.
Yeah. Of course, this is if you talk about a game about going inside a small dollhouse replica of a larger house, then the idea of going inside the room that you started in is an idea that comes fairly easily. But actually acting on that, design-wise and implementation-wise, not so much.
Oh yeah.
Just talking about this sequence was like a nightmare.
Yeah, very much.
It's like okay, you have to, because it like language
you in. What?
Yeah. which level are we on? Are we on the wait? Okay, so level 1, or is that level 0? Is the top level, and then if you're on level 1, wait, which was level 1?
Yeah.
And you just end up going, having these like conversations to anyone who's kind of outside the conversation. You just sound like a complete nut job.
Yeah.
The word inception was thrown around a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, Tom, like the idea of like going into the Dollhouse multiple times comes pretty easy, and it did. Like the idea that the end of the game would be you go into the attic and you end up in the attic of the house that you were in, but there's another dollhouse, I think was there like almost from the start, right?
I think so.
But we didn't necessarily know what...
we had no idea what you'd actually do once you find another dollhouse. And so this goes back to what we were talking about last time, the idea of like boss puzzles. Can you have a puzzle that feels like a boss?
Yeah.
Because if you can, this is the place to have it.
And I guess the way you do that with a game that's been entirely based around this one sort of like uber object is to make a puzzle which uses the entire house in some way.
Absolutely. So the dollhouse goes back to being a traditional kind of room puzzle box in a sense, where the dollhouse itself becomes the focus, which is a nice thing to do as the finale, because then it also gives you a chance to go around all of the other rooms and kind of have a little whistle-stop tour of all the various bits of the game that you've seen before. But the actual puzzle itself, I very clearly remember the difficulty of trying to decide what it would be. We were talking about maybe you could move the rooms around, you could change where the kitchen is. Maybe it's like a kind of node-based thing where you're moving the rooms around to create like a path through the rooms. And I was kind of going all in on this quite an abstract puzzle, basically, where you've got the symbols representing each room and they're connected via nodes and stuff like this. And I was heading down that path, and I think you very rightly realised that it was just not going to be very satisfying, because it needs to be tied to the story that we've been telling. And so I think basically you just went away and came up with this puzzle, which is a maze, but it's a maze which tells the story of Edward.
You're giving me a bit too much credit there, I think. I'll tell you the way that I remember it, right? I remember that I had a vague concept, and at this point we were getting, towards the end of development, and I was a bit worried because the game had taken a little bit longer than we'd wanted it to take. And I thought, okay, what if I had this idea for how this could work, and I'm like, maybe not always the best selling point, but I remember saying, this won't be too much work. So the idea was just, we had the idea of, it was, you'd find the dollhouse, that some of the rooms would be open, you'd find a note which said, which from Edward saying, I went from the curiosity room. I thought that Abigail might be in the study, so I went from the curiosity room back to the study. And then you would pick up an Edward figurine, and you would move and you'd put it in the study. And like that was as much as I had. And I kind of pitched this, going, "Hey, look, it won't be. We're running out of time, or rather, we've been going for quite a long time." This won't be too hard to do, and everyone was kind of like, that's not, I guess, not really good enough. We can do better. We should do more. The game needs a good ending. Don't worry about the cost of it so much. It needs to be good, right? Lyndon,
hearing that.
Yeah, it is. Very true. Yeah. Lyndon and Rod had sort of taken a bit of that idea and they built on it, and they had the idea of they were the ones who came up with the statue kind of, I think, going towards the Edward statue kind of moving towards the Abigail statue, and Abigail disappearing. I think that was them, right?
So.
But it was still kind of just like a sequence and not a puzzle, right? and it felt like it didn't need to be an actual puzzle. So you, me, and V got in a room and just kind of like hammered at it for a while, and I think eventually we figured out, it might have been me who figured it out, it doesn't matter. Together we all worked on this thing until we ended up with what we have here. And the thing that, kind of like you said, that makes me really proud of this ending is that it does kind of mirror the madness of the narrative, or like Edward's madness, right?
Yeah, you're playing as him in a sense here by moving his little model around.
Yeah, and exactly, yeah, and he's kind of describing, because by this point in the story, what he doesn't realize is that he is inside the dollhouse, right? So he, you know, as he runs around to every room looking for Abigail, and thinking she's going to be there, he's kind of going more and more, getting more and more separated from reality. He's going deeper and deeper. He's kind of replaying the same thing, sort of same routine over and over. And I like to think of it as him like searching every room in the house, ending up in the attic, ending up being absorbed into the house somehow, and kind of not realizing it, and just going deeper and deeper without kind of understanding what's going on. And because you've got this eyepiece and sort of a larger understanding, and haven't been sort of maybe contaminated by the null so much, you have a more of a level head and an ability to traverse through these layers without just losing your mind like he has.
I remember, trying to communicate all of that. We were thinking about, okay, we're going to need notes in here. Like, we're going to need some kind of text, which is written down to try and help explain this at each level. We had quite a tricky meeting where we're like, how are we gonna justify having these notes? Like, why is he writing them? And I think it was Vasilius who came up with this idea of like, he's writing the notes for Abigail. He's leaving them for her, hoping that she'll find them. Which I thought was just a brilliant way of kind of justifying that.
Yeah, it all just, I feel like it came together really, really nicely. And, you know, the Holy Grail, the thing that we don't get to do very often at all, and that's very hard to do, is to have a puzzle that actually mirrors or tells a story. Like, I mean, it's that it doesn't really happen.
Yeah, it's tricky enough to make a puzzle. Yeah.
Exactly.
This is your man that you see at the beginning of the game, right? Right at the beginning.
Oh yeah, of course. So I've got something interesting to say about this. Of course, yeah. This is Edward. He, in that note, you see that he kind of he realizes that he's stuck in this infinite maze that he's never going to escape on, and he kind of gives up. So I always feel like the ending to this game is actually kind of sad. You know, he was just this kind of patsy that got manipulated into kind of like messing with this thing that was far beyond what he should have been messing with, and you know, Abigail was kind of the one who didn't get roped into it. She made the right decision to escape and leave when she did. You know, she still hoped that maybe she could find a way to help him, but she did like the sensible thing, which was not get dragged down by his sort of his madness, because she knew that it was beyond her. She wasn't going to save him. This was too much to handle. And this person that we see here is actually is Chris, who you know, the character is based on. Not based narratively, just visually. So he was the model for the paintings in the house and stuff like that. But I could be wrong about. I think that. So as a base, Tony, who made this model, used photogrammetry.
Oh wow!
I did not know that.
Yeah. So we have he took like loads of pictures of Chris in his costume.
Wow.
As Edward, fed them into software, which sort of stitched them all together to create the base that he could then go in and sculpt for like a game-ready asset. So that's pretty awesome.
Very cool. Great tentacle shader here as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just checking we haven't missed the secret hint yet. It's after this bit. Isn't it?
No, that's right at the end.
Yeah, okay. Just make sure I don't skip
to
it.
Make sure we don't miss it, because people don't want to miss it. Don't put the null in the box, all right?
Yes, okay.
It's gonna happen. It's happening. You know what? It took ages to figure out what you were even going to put on the dollhouse. It took me so long to figure that out.
Yep, the no key rule.
The no key rule. Yeah.
You can't just unlock it. It's got to be something interesting.
We'd already used our quota of keys. And what happens when you go down multiple layers deep into a house? Well, you're going to get spat out, right?
Yeah. As soon as anyone has this idea, it becomes resistant. It's going to be very difficult to do because it's lots of rapid camera moves.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting misconception that I've seen about this dollhouse, which is that people seem to think it's the house from the first and second games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it isn't. Like, if you look at them, they're both pretty different. It's just meant to be a dollhouse. Abigail's dollhouse from when she was a child. It's not meant to be a reference to the rooms 1 or 2. It's just its own thing. Don't put the null in yet. We're gonna wait for a while.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm good. My hands are off the mouse.
Someone's asking why the house is very small at the ending. So my idea was that and it kind of is explained in the notes. I think that the null kind of warps the house, the dollhouse. The dollhouse is just a regular dollhouse until the null is hidden in it by Abigail. Abigail hides it in there to keep it away from Edward, and in doing so, the null works its magic, and you get the dollhouse. So yeah, this is the sort of little Easter egg. But remember when we said that every single interaction has a hint? Well, this is one of those situations where I should place an element inside my case. My employees are waiting. It's one of those situations where no one's going to need a hint. Everyone's going to know what to do. So it was a little canvas that we could put something cool. I think it was Si's idea, you know? I think he kind of had the idea, what if we put something interesting there? And then I thought, what if we tell a little story? I should place the null element inside my case. My employees are waiting. All right, we haven't got the second hint yet. Perhaps they should wait indefinitely. There is much I could achieve with a simple sample such as this. So I really liked the idea that whereas you've been single-mindedly chasing this null element throughout the whole game, always talking about your employers, what if you had a moment where his hand sort of kind of stopped and he had a bit of a potential change in heart? You know, what could he do? What could he do with this?
Treachery.
Yeah, like, you know, why not?
The null corrupts everyone, including...
No, not yet. I must bide my time. So that's like... It's kind of... He doesn't, as we know. Everyone who's played the game knows what happens at the end. But I really thought it would be pretty cool to have that in there. And it was, a harmless little thing. Some people on the dev team didn't even know that was there.
Oh, I didn't know it was there for a while, yeah.
But, I liked it's something that the room has always done very well, which is hints at larger possible narratives which, you know, threads that could be picked up, or maybe they won't be picked up. You know, not every story has to have or can have a completely definitive answer at the end. And I thought that would be a nice way of giving your character a little bit more depth than the sort of like, single-minded crony who's just gone in to grab this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It ties into the other Easter egg as well, didn't it? Which we miss.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do we talk about that? Nah, I mean...
Who was it? Lyndon who designed the contraption on the front of that box?
Yes, he did. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, fun fact about this is that's me. I think, my...
Let's give a moment.
Yeah. A lot of acting going on. I was really in character.
Oh yeah.
Well, the reason it was me is because so Lyndon is the guy who did this cutscene. So the way it was made is that the only real thing there is me, in costume there, dressed up as Hydrus, Collector Hydrus. Everything else is CG. You know, he did an awesome job, and there's a bunch of cool behind-the-scenes stuff in the. There's a Flickr album full of rows of in-depth stuff about the way, the way the game was made. So there's some cool stuff you can see there. But like the first shot walking along was done on like a really cheap treadmill. Because obviously we didn't have like a camera set up that could like follow someone walking, so we just got a treadmill and I walked on it holding the case. I had a real case that looked that Lyndon made, or he bought a case and like modified it, and it was the same dimensions as the one that was gonna be in the game, and then he tracked and added in a CG case with the cool lock on the outside and all that kind of stuff, and put that in my hand so it looked like I was carrying the real super cool case from inside the game. And we filmed it in a really glamorous location behind the old Fireproof offices, by the wheelie bins.
In the car park.
In the car park, yeah. So, and one of the cool things was that like Lyndon had like set up the shop in Maya and stuff. And what he did was he knew what the composition was going to be, and so that we could get the shots right to fit into the CG stuff he built and the camera angles. He drew like a template on like acetate, blue tacked it to the viewport of the camera, to the screen of the camera, and then used that to line it up with to get me in frame in the right way, in the right perspective, and the right distance. So it was like really high tech, but yeah, it was really fun to do, and I wasn't planning to be in the cutscene, but Lyndon was like, you've got the right hair, so you can do it.
It's the only qualification you need.
Look, it wasn't the most taxing performance, right? I didn't have to reach deep inside myself to find that character.
No,
I just had to walk a bit.
Didn't have to go method.
On this table, so.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, that's the lot, I guess.
We completed the game.
We have completed the game.
Indeed. Fantastic.
There was a cool... Yeah, we always put thank you for playing at the end of all our games, because we do appreciate it. Like, it's true. Like, we really do appreciate the fact that everyone plays and seems to love these games. Like, it's a pleasure reading comments from people who've really enjoyed them and had sort of like special experiences with them. Someone was saying, "Tell us where Abigail went, you monsters." I don't know.
That would be telling, quite
It would
literally.
be telling. I have a sort of my own personal theories about what would happen, but you know, sometimes it's worth, you know, that could change. It could change my mind tomorrow about that. The truth about all these things is that they exist in our heads, and you know, we're human and we can change our minds. And you know, if we were ever to revisit that story, chances are I would feel a different way than to the way I did now. But you know, that's how every creative thing is.
Schrodinger's Abigail.
Yeah. Basically, what I'm saying is that anyone else's interpretation or anyone else's desire for what they wish could have happened is as valid as my own, because it doesn't exist yet. You know, we don't have a Bible somewhere saying, you know, exactly what's going to happen and all that kind of stuff. We don't. We build the games and we sort of we do what we feel is the right thing at the time. It's very practical in the end.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
All right, I guess.
Is that a big old wrap?
I think that's
a wrap.
I think that's a wrap.
Old Sins Developer Retrospective by Fireproof Games TM.
I believe so. It's an absolute pleasure to see the PC version. As I said last time, it just looks amazing, and it's just a joy to see. Everyone did amazing work on this.
Well, I hope that this was an enjoyable, because it was a lot of fun for me, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say I did, and I learned a lot just sitting here muted listening to you. It was really good fun to listen to you talk about the game, and it's always nice to see it being played. And from what I gather in chat while I was chatting away to them, they seem to really enjoy it too. So well done, guys, great job.
Yeah, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess on that note, we can probably wrap things up there then. So thank you to everybody in the chat who was along for the ride. This video will be saved on YouTube, so if you want to watch it again after the fact or just share it around, feel free to do that. And that's us. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And you know, who knows, we might do another one of these at some point in the future, but it's to be discussed. So cheers everybody, and
Bye everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.